Hello and welcome to the Canyons Are Calling podcast. I'm Charles Jocelyn, your host for the show. A couple quick things before we get into our story today, because it is a pretty long story, but it's pretty intense, and I think you will all enjoy it. First of all, I want to let you know about the podcast birthday party. It's going to be in North Wash. We'll camp at the Santhrax campground. It's going to be February 11th through the 13th. I have created a Facebook page, but if you're not on Facebook, please reach out to me via email at thecanyonsarecalling@gmail.com. I can give you some more information. Basically, I plan to camp at the Santhrax campground. It seems like we might have a really big group, so we'll split into smaller groups and do canyons and hikes throughout the day, and then meet up back at the campground for evening campfire stories and things like that. I think it'll be a really good time. I'm hoping for really good weather. North Wash seems to have better weather during the winter than most places in Utah, so I think it's a good choice to go there. Secondly, for all of my Patreon members, we are having a monthly canyon call, and that's going to be the first Wednesday of every month. So on February 2nd will be our next call at 6:30 Mountain Standard Time. We just get together and talk about our favorite canyons. Next week, I want to talk about our favorite gear and what gear we always bring along, what ropes we like to use, what shoes we like to wear, things like that, even down to wetsuits and dry bags and whatever. So if you would like to be a part of our Patreon canyon conversation, this podcast is completely supported by viewers or listeners like you. So you can join in on the Patreon fun at patreon.com/thecanyonsarecalling. Patreon is just kind of a secure platform where creators can get donations for the stuff the content that they create. So if you appreciate my work and want to give me a donation, you can go there, and then as a reward, I'll give you some stickers, maybe a beer glass, and then you're also welcome to join on these monthly canyon calls, which I think will be really fun. I asked my husband what he thought of the last one, and he said honestly he wasn't expecting it to be very cool, and he really thought it was awesome. So there you go. My husband's super supportive, but that was his thoughts on our canyon call. Okay. The last thing before we get into the show, the podcast is reaching a year old, and so I just wanted to do a little thank you for my fans, those of you who listen often. If you could share your favorite episode with a friend and let them know maybe why you like the show, and then tag me in it so I know that you shared it with somebody, I'm going to enter you in to win a drawing that I'm going to have on March 1st. And I'm going to have at least a 120-foot rope available and maybe some other stuff. So the more people that share with their friends and the more you share, the more times you get to be in the drawing. And then I'm going to announce the winner on March 1st in my episode that I launch on that day. So I have a lot of awesome episodes coming up. I would love to increase my fan base. So if you like the show, feel it's valuable, just quickly share it with a friend and maybe you'll win a 120-foot canyon fire rope. May the odds be ever in your favor. Okay, like I said, this is going to be a pretty long conversation with Jude Thomas and Kelleigh Miller about their epic experience that they had in the Maze or the Ice Cube Canyon, which is located in Red Rocks near Las Vegas. So I'm going to keep this intro kind of short because, like I said, the interview is kind of long, but it's well worth it. Enjoy the show. Okay, cool. We are here with Jude Thomas and Kelleigh Miller.
Kelleigh, yeah.
I always want to say Kylie until you said that yesterday. Sorry about that. Would you like to take a moment just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got into the outdoors?
Sure. I've always been outdoor enthusiast. I started rock climbing when I was 16 years old, and then taught rock climbing for a number of years, avid mountain biker, hiker, light mountaineering, not really the heavy stuff, but light mountaineering. So I've just always been into getting outside and enjoying the outdoors. And I work in the film industry, so I work hard on movies, and then I play hard when I'm not at work.
What types of movies have you worked on? Can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, I worked on the Avengers. We don't get as many big movies here in Ohio, but we had Captain America and the Avengers, and a lot of big movies like that. And
Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious, yeah, that was hilarious.
Ooh, awesome.
Because I had to climb this scaffolding, and the safety officer was like, "Clip in better," and I was like, "No," and we had a whole conversation about safety, and then he acquiesced to my expertise. He was like, "Oh yeah, that actually is true."
That's nice. Very cool. Okay, Jude, how about you?
Nowhere near as exciting as Kelleigh. Let's sort of professionally, I'm a dentist and an attorney. I spent a lot of time going to school. I went to business school and law school and dental school and some surgical residency years and so forth. I'm kind of a guy who was married to education for a long time, but now kind of have settled into a gig which is pretty much just designed to support my adventure lifestyle. I bought a dental practice a few years ago, and we're only open 3 days a week, and it's pretty low key, and it just gives us a ton of time to be able to travel and do the things we like. I've also always been a big outdoor guy. I've been running trails since I was a kid, and a ton of marathons, dabbled in the ultra running stuff a bit, have been a mountain biker since I was in my late teens. Rock climbing I came to a little bit later in life, certainly later than Kelleigh. Just mountaineering, scuba diving, whitewater kayaking. I mean, Kelleigh and I do just a ton of that kind of stuff. We're really into the outdoors, and we finally kind of have a schedule after, her many years in New York, working like 7 jobs, and my years, going to school and working for law firms in New York City and Philadelphia and residency, and all those years where we just had really no free time in our lives. We were finally about, 7 or 8 years ago, fell into a point where we now have much more time. We're able to control our schedule a little bit, and that has sort of led to an explosion of traveling out west and other places around the world to do the things that we like to do.
Very cool. So how did canyoneering enter your lives?
The first time we went canyoneering was what was that? That was
Was it Cassidy Arch?
It was Cassidy Arch.
Yeah.
It was Cassidy Arch.
Yeah, I mean, we've been climbers forever, and so the skill set was always there, but we didn't really have a chance to do specifically canyoneering until probably a few years ago. And I think that was our first thing.
Yeah, well, we had done the Narrows top down, but that didn't involve, we just canyoneering, but it didn't involve rappelling and anchor setting and everything else. And that was things that I had always been comfortable with, because I had not only done it for years, but I had also taught it. And it was more taking more trips out west, because we don't have canyons here. Rappel here is just a beautiful, huge cliff in North Carolina or something like that, where similar skill set, but definitely different environment. And so we did Cassidy Arch, and it definitely gave us the bug, where we were like, oh, I want to do more of this.
Yeah, I guess that's the evolution. We'd been climbing and raving for years, but then we got to spend more time out west hiking in slots, like Buckskin Gulch, and was the thing we did in Canyonlands. We hiked some slots, a bunch of places, and so we kind of got interested in that, that
Fiery Furnace.
Yeah, things like that. And so the coalescence was, we really need to get on some ropes into some slots. That would be neat, and that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
Okay, I love Cassidy Arch. That's a great canyon.
Beautiful.
It's a great beginner canyon too.
Yeah, quick in and out. Yeah.
That first rappel is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
The pictures,
it's so beautiful.
Pictures write themselves there. I mean, it's
Yeah. Way cool. Okay, so how do we transition into where you got into the maze?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Jude had a conference he was going to, and we started exploring, like, hey, I wonder if there are any canyons near Las Vegas, and what are those canyons? And we started, we went to Blue Gnome and Ryan's Guide, and we were looking at all the different descriptions, and narrowed it down to a couple things. And then, Red Rock is right there outside of the city, and Ice Cube had a lot to offer. We knew it was going to be a big day. I mean, but we went back and forth about it. And then I actually found a video of somebody who ran it with their kid. And I was like, it can't be too bad. Right. So, looking at the pictures of it, it was just stunning. So we said, yeah, we've got to do this. We got to make this happen.
And, this was in 2019 in like the second week of June. So we knew we had like 14 and a half hours of daylight. And so even though it was kind of pushing the limits of, Ice Cube is a 4B4. And so we knew it was pushing the limits in terms of what we'd done with respect to the amount of time, the number of wraps. And I mean, just to give an overview, I guess, of Ice Cube for anyone who's listening, the canyon itself is laid out in three parts, the main canyon with sort of a bookend on either side of hiking. So you basically hike a couple miles up a gravel road, and then you ascend 1,500 feet up to a plateau rim. Then you drop in. The canyon itself is then in three parts. The first part is a series of between 12 and 15 wraps through some pretty technical stuff, and it progressively wetter. Then you hit the middle section, which is essentially a hike through a boulder field for about the same distance. It's sort of creek bed / boulder fall / deadfall, a lot of scrambling and down climbing. And then the third section, which is really spectacular, is again a series of 12 to 15 rappels that just are relentless. They don't stop. It's, get off your rope, tie into the next one, get off your rope, just nonstop into very narrow, windy slots. And then when that's all done, after the big last rappel, it's a hike out down through a boulder field again to a trailhead, and then you loop back. So we had a good sense of what it was going to look like. And it sounded like sort of the perfect thing for us on a long day.
Yeah.
Awesome. So just to back up a little bit, for people that don't really know what canyoneering is, can you explain what a 4B4 means?
Sure. Canyon rating system is divided into usually three parts, sometimes with a letter at the end. But the first number is difficulty, right? Yeah. So on a scale of 1 to 4, I think. Yeah. And so this is 4 out of 4 essentially. The second letter, A, B, or C, indicates whether there's water in the canyon. A is essentially dry. B is there's going to be some pools for sure. And C, I think, is like running heavy current water, waterfalls, that kind of thing. Yeah. All right. And then the last number, which is a Roman numeral for 1, 2, 3, 4 rating there, just determines how long of a day you can expect in the canyon. So 1 is a really short day, half day trip at worst, and then all the way up to a 4. Some people then append a letter onto it, an R or whatever, if there's some individual challenges that are super technical or dangerous. I don't know if I ever saw a letter appended to this one either way.
No, the anchors were all good. I mean, it was definitely not R-rated, although it's definitely not R-rated, but there are moments. Some of the down climbs were definitely intense. You look at them and you go, if I want to throw caution to the wind, I could just sit on my butt and slide down it, but it's almost vertical. And again, because you think you could slide down it, there's not a lot of friction. You're just really chimneying down those things and pushing as hard as you can and hoping for the best.
Wow. And then, if you do slide, the potential of like twisting an ankle or landing wrong is...
Yep, those are common injuries.
Yeah, very common.
We haven't had those.
Mm-hmm.
We were looking back on some of the footage that we had, and I had a funny moment where I come through a down climb and you kind of slide, And Jude mentioned, he's like, yeah, I just slid there and I started sliding, and I just looked at him and I said, I'm stuck. And it was fine. Like he braced my foot and I got myself up out. My hips had wedged right into the slide.
no.
Yeah. And you just have that moment of like, ooh,
Right.
oh, okay. It's not a big deal.
I'm fine. Yeah. So I assume that you guys had done other canyons between Cassidy Arch and Icebox.
Yeah. That wasn't a jump from Cassidy to Ice. And for the avoidance of doubt,
right.
What you just did is something I do all the time. We were in Ice Cube Canyon. Right next to it is Ice Box Canyon. And to make it even more confusing, the exit route from Ice Cube Canyon puts you at the Ice Box trailhead. But again, to avoid confusion, Ice Cube is what we were in. It's also known as the Maze. You want to shorthand it for that. But I'll probably say that.
I know it more as the Maze, so we'll just reference it as that. From now on.
It's a good name. It's
a very good name.
Aptly named for it.
Yeah. I unfortunately haven't done it yet, but it's high on my list. Maybe after your story,
you may change your mind.
Down a little. We'll see.
You want us to walk you through our day?
Yes, for sure.
All right. So we were staying in Las Vegas. We had things to do the night before, so there wasn't any option to camp in Red Rock Conservation Area. So our goal was to basically be at the park when the gate opens. And I think it changes throughout the year, perhaps, but in June it opens at 6 a.m. So we were out of our hotel, by 5 a.m. at the gate by like 5:40, ready to go. And they opened the gate, and we drove up and hit the road. So we were, essentially we were there as early as we could possibly be without spending the night in the canyon in order to try to kind of maximize our day.
Yeah. So we got to the park, and we drive to the trailhead, and then the first part of the hike's pretty easy. It's a 4x4 road. And then immediately you get to a use trail and you start climbing. So that was.
Yeah, so it's a couple miles on the 4x4 road, and then like 2.5 miles, and then you do about a 1,500 foot ascent up to the rim. Sort of classic canyon. You got to get up on top first, and we move through all that fairly quickly. It's a little arduous. I mean, it's a pretty solid climb to get up there, but the trail is not too hard to fall, at least as far as getting to the rim. But at that point, we were in a place where we'd never been before. And we had pretty good description of the layout of the canyon. And there was, supposedly we're supposed to be cairns up there to kind of lead you to the place where you drop into the canyon, which is, it's not right there. You have to work your way over to it. But that's the first point where things kind of fell apart. We essentially wasted a huge amount of time on the rim trying to find the drop in. And we were relying on description and maps, and just kind of got disoriented, ended up falling instead of cairns all the way out to an overlook that looks over Las Vegas, which is completely the wrong direction, and turned around. And it sounds incredible because when we finally made the decision to, hey, let's just use the waypoints that we plugged into our GPS device and get back on this stupid trail. By the time we did that and got to the drop-in point, somehow we had blown a huge amount of daylight.
Yeah, it was astounding how much time we lost, and as it was happening, we're feeling it, and then when we finally did find the trail again and realized where we were, because the Ice Box Canyon is pretty well traveled, so it was
Ice Cube.
No, Ice Box.
Oh, the other
Ice Box. So
sorry.
The other one is very well traveled, and it's just a hike. So
right.
A lot of the cairns were either going in that direction, which we didn't want to do. And then the other issue is something that I now fight very vigilantly against, is what we term cairn culture. So a lot of people go out and they think they're being meditative and zen, and they build little cairns and they take pictures of them. They think it's really cute. And what they're doing is making it very hard for people who are using those as waypoints and confidence points, really. During an adventure.
But still entirely our fault. I mean, we should have just gone to our GPS devices and followed the waypoints, because once we did that, we were back on track in no time. but we literally had split up. We had walkie-talkies, so we had split up, fanned out, trying to figure out where the heck the drop-in was. We wasted so much time up there. Ultimately, we finally found our way there and got to the drop-in, and it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. I mean, at that point, we probably should have said, we don't have enough,
let's come back another day.
we don't have enough daylight. But, I mean, everybody probably runs into that dilemma at some point and says, we just spent 3 hours getting here. And the other part,
right. You're from out of town. You're not going to be back there very soon. Yeah. So many.
And the other part, which will come full circle in this story later, is that we'd done a ton of research on whatever beta was out there at the time in 2019. Blue Gnome was a good source for that. And Blue Gnome had described what's known as the sneak route, which is, again, that canyon is divided into those 3 sections. For people who want to skip the first section of the canyon and make it a shorter day, there's a way to take the sneak route to drop you into that middle, sort of more level section, and then go down from there to essentially cut it in half. We thought, well, we can't really do that. We're in the wrong place to do that. But since the sneak route doesn't describe any rope use, just more class 4 type scrambling, and perhaps if we get in a difficult spot, we could use the sneak route to get out of the canyon and then follow the trail back. So essentially, still drop in today, do the first upper part, and then if we need to bail, maybe we can bail via the sneak route in reverse up out of the canyon. But the important thing being that our description of the sneak route was largely how people get into the canyon, not how they get out.
Yeah.
We knew we were making a big assumption there, but
Right. Okay.
we still saw it as a sort of safety valve and thought, let's do it. So,
It might be possible. Okay. That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
So
we dropped in. We hit the canyon at like 11. The first rappel wasn't until about 1 o'clock, I think. Or
like 11:30.
11:30. Oh, yeah. 11:30.
That was that's the water, really, kind of.
And then, the first section of it is just, it's so beautiful. And it is, the first section and the third section are literally rappel, move 20 feet, rappel. I mean, it is one after the other after the other. There is very little hiking in between. As soon as you're off rappel, you're looking, you turn to your right and there's the next anchor. So it is kind of like a go scenario. And
it was beautiful. And we didn't have, technical difficulties. We enjoyed it. And we were well equipped. We were, both in wetsuits, excuse me. Had all of our gear pretty well dialed in. But the challenge for us was just, in that first section was just efficiency. There's just 2 of us. So, one person's on the rope, one person's getting ready to, bag the rope and flake it and carry it and set up for the next one. And, even working as efficiently as we could, we were often frustrated by just determining where the anchor was, if there was one, because some of the anchors were natural and some of them were bolted. And some of them, as Kelly mentioned, we'd come to the edge of something and say, is this supposed to be anchored, or are we actually supposed to down climb this spot? I mean, there were places where we just, we blew time wandering back and forth, trying to decide whether we were supposed to down climb it or if we were supposed to rope into something that just wasn't there. And when you're doing like I said, that first upper section is between 12 and 15 rappels. It really starts to add up through the day where you get to each anchor and you say, okay, I don't see any bolts anywhere. I don't see sling tied to anything. I don't see a way down this, but maybe I'm just not following it correctly. And there is some little ledge we can edge down and come down it. And I think if you added up all the time we did that, it was really excessive. But we always either found the down climb or found the anchor, or
built the anchor.
Yeah,
I did build anchors on that first one.
Yeah.
Sections where, after looking around and determining, this should be a rappel. There's no down climb here, and it matches the description that we had. Okay, somebody probably pulled the webbing here because it was old or whatever. So setting the anchor and
we had
go down from there.
Ton of webbing, ton of hardware. I mean, we really were prepared kind of for anything technical, but what I guess if I had to say in summary, what we were not prepared for was just the amount of time it would take us to kind of figure it out. It was a route finding / I've never been in this canyon before, and they're just constant decisions to make as you work through. So long story short, we got close to the end of that first section of wraps, and we were sort of using a guide, wrap numbers, 13 should be off a tree to the right and wrap number 14. So we kind of had an idea where we were.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to the last one and we look at the clock and we're like, man, it's mid-afternoon. Like we are actually, it's late afternoon at that point. Yeah. We were getting really late in the day. So we had to have a powwow again and say, okay, we're about to enter that middle third of the canyon where we may have an option to bail out via the sneak route, but we don't know exactly where that is. We have to find it first based on the descriptions we have, or we can continue. But we know if we continue, we're definitely going to be leaving this canyon at night in the dark. And Ice Cube Canyon is named Ice Cube Canyon for a reason. It is dark and cold in there at night. I mean, it does not get a whole lot of sunlight in those deeper reaches. So we knew it was going to be chilly, if we continued on. So we debated it for a while and said, okay, let's try to find the used trail that leads to the sneak route and see if we can get out of here, because maybe it just makes more sense. And to elaborate, supposedly the top of the sneak route, there is a trail right up there, Bridge Rim, something, Bridge Mountain, something. There's a trail that supposedly runs right along that rim. So if you can just get to the top of it, in theory, walk right out. And we thought, let's try to find it. So,
yeah. And as we both mentioned before, we're both avid runners and hikers and, dabbling in the ultra. So at that point, we looked at each other and we thought, well, we'll lean into what we know we're good at. Like if we have to hike out of this, and it was very vertical, but hikeable, a lot of scrub brush and everything else. And we're looking at that and looking at, the potential for rappelling in the dark. And again, like trying to find anchors or trying to find options to build anchors in the dark.
Right. If we just
when it's cold.
Yeah.
So we said, you know what? Yeah, let's try to hike out. So we split up, and Jude went up, and I started searching down along the middle section to see if there was anything. Like I would go a little bit further down, and then I'd look up and see if I could really see any telltale signs of trail use or cairns or anything like that. And it's at that point that I twisted my ankle pretty badly. So we were split up, and he was calling for me on the walkie, and also the walkie was not giving reception. So I didn't hear him calling for me on the walkie. He had gone up, and then he came back down through the middle section and was yelling for me. And I was like, I'm over here. He came and he found me, and of course I'm sitting there.
She's on the ground holding her ankle. And I'm like, okay, well, bad news. I didn't find the sneak route. I assume you didn't either. Now you're a gimp, so we're not, things are not shaping up as best they could. And now it's literally like, 4 or 5 o'clock PM at that point, I think. And you're like, man, now we've burned some more time. So we again had a conference and said, do we push on down the canyon, or do we just start ascending and assume that we're going to run into the sneak route somewhere traversing? Because the description has it going back and forth across that, sort of vertical face out of the canyons. We thought we might still be able to find it if we just push through the scrub and start climbing up, and maybe we'll have a better angle. Or again, we could just start heading down canyon. And I don't know. We decided to try to find the sneak route. So we tore a bunch of skin going through all that brush. We were still wearing our wetsuits, but I was wearing a shorty. Were you wearing a shorty?
No. Fortunately for me, I had surgery earlier that year. I had hernia surgery, and I had gained weight, so I did not fit into my shorty. Just before we went on the trip, I tried to put my shorty on, and it didn't fit, and I was like, oh man, I was so mad. But I had a set of wetsuit pants, a sleeveless wetsuit top, and a wetsuit jacket. They're more kind of like paddling gear, but that actually ended up working, probably both the weight gain and the long pants and long jacket.
She said she gained weight, but she probably, she went from being a stick to being slightly less than a stick.
Well, the suit wouldn't zip up. Well, it was one of those moments where you put it on and you're like, I gotta climb in this. I don't think so. So yeah, it actually did end up working in my favor that I had those those full cover pants on. And then later when we were in the third section, when it was really cold, I had a wetsuit jacket that I was able to zip up and put on. And that really helped me push through. But when we looked up and decided to try again for the sneak route, I also remember saying to Jude when I looked up, I said, I have gear. And if we have to rappel back down, we can.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. And so that was kind of the first point where we started to feel a little stressed. This has to work at this point because it's getting late in the day. So we, kind of smashed through the brush, and it transitions from that to some slab climbing and some boulders. And it's pretty steep the whole way. The vertical is significant to get out of the slot at that point. So we very slowly, methodically made our way up, and it took a long time. And probably, I don't know, getting near the top started to become a little more treacherous. We did not find any marked route this whole time we were trying to climb this face, but we just continued to go up and traverse back and forth. We'd run into dead ends, and then we'd, kind of backtrack and try to find a different way and to get an elevation and just slowly gaining elevation. And then at one point we came to what I would describe as sort of a vertical chute. We were on a pretty thin ledge, and there was a chute that, I don't know, how high would you say it was, Kelly?
I would give the chute probably 30 feet.
Yeah, maybe 30 feet of like.
It wasn't small. It wasn't like huge.
Sort of sketchier climbing.
It was just enough where you look at it and you go, okay, that's not horrible.
And it's something that we would have looked at probably normally and said, there's no point in trying to go up that. Let's find another way. But you can see just above it a big plateau, and above that we can see sky. And we thought, okay, this is probably it. If we can get up this last bit onto that plateau and then scramble a little bit, we have a good chance of being on the rim and maybe getting out of here before it's dark. So I went up the chute first, and the reaches were a little long, enough that it felt a little sketchy. And I mean, I had to really stretch myself out to have handholds and footholds, but I managed to get up there okay and just kind of plop down on the plateau above it. And I waited for Kelly.
I got into the chute, and it was very, very reachy for me. And then combined with my pack weight, I got halfway up the chute, and you always have to adjust your climbing techniques based on what you're doing, right? If you're rock climbing is one thing, rock climbing with a backpack on that's an extra 30 pounds of upper body weight that I'm not used to is a whole nother thing. So I got halfway up that chute and my foot slipped, and I tried wedging myself in, at which point it knocked the walkie-talkie off of my harness. The walkie hit my foot, hit the ledge, and went for a 1,000-foot drop. And I yelled up to Jude at that point. I just yelled up to him. I said, throw me a rope, because even just having like the stability of a rope to, keep myself on the rock. I was doing a forearm brace in the crack. I couldn't really get my body fully into the crack to just kind of rest and collect myself. And so, yeah, I yelled up and I was like, throw me a rope. And he's like, what? I was like, just do it now. There's a lot of urgency in it. And he was like, okay.
And I honestly didn't even initially know what to do. It was, I've certainly belayed people for decades from below, but have never really had to think about how to rescue belay somebody from above. All of which is really dumb. I mean, we should have, she should have taken her pack off. We should have pulled it up. I should have thrown her a rope in the first place. But we were just kind of in that autonomic, keep moving forward kind of mode. And you start to lose sight of smart things sometimes when you do that. But in any event, she was like, just tie it to your harness, whatever. And so I quickly, I think I ran it through my device and threw it down to her. And there was like that pregnant moment of me waiting for her to say that she got it. Because I'm throwing a rope over an edge and I can't even see where it's going, kind of thing. But she was able to grab onto it, and
Yeah, wedged into the chute. Left hand has a forearm brace, which is basically like you shove your hand into the crack and then you push your wrist and your elbow in opposite directions to just kind of wedge yourself and give yourself something to, because there's nothing to hold on to. And then with my other hand, tying a figure eight and tying myself in.
Yeah, one-handed figure eight. That's pretty nice work.
Yeah.
Reversed, I'd probably be dead.
But, that's something we should all practice.
Yeah.
You just start
one-handed figure
out.
In any event, we both laid on that plateau, kind of staring at the sky and thinking, okay, that was really dumb. Probably should not have made that move. But we were also on the plateau and thought, okay, finally, this is good. So there was a last bit of scrambling to be done to get up to what I assumed would be the way out. And Kelleigh took a timeout, as well she should have. And I did the last bit of climbing up there myself. And I got, not kidding you, Cheryl, I tell you, I think I got within 20 feet of the top of the rim and topped out. Could not find a way up. Literally got up there sat on this rock ledge. There's a dead tree like 20 feet from the edge of the rim next to me, and just a sheer featureless face in front of me with nowhere to go. So we had just spent 2 hours climbing that vertical face to get to that point, and I'm on this 20-foot wide ledge 20 feet below, and there's just no way. I mean, I'm going through everything in my head, I throw like a pack up there, anything. But I could not think of anything that would not probably get us killed. And as that realization is dawning, the sun has literally just dipped below the rim, and sunset is here. And I just sat down and put my face in my hands, and had this like utter sense of, I can't believe this is actually happening to me, and that we are really screwed now, and we're gonna have to make some hard decisions. And I'm sitting there, and as I'm just like, feeling horrible about life, I hear this like buzzing, thrumming, metallic sound. It was just like the strangest thing. I'd never heard anything like it before. And I'm picturing like some horrific insect is about to land on my face or something. And I raised my hand out of my head, and directly in front of me at eye level, like I kid you not, inches away, is the most beautiful hummingbird you've ever seen, staring me right in the face. Like,
wow.
He's looking at me like, hey, what are you doing? This is where I hang out all the time. And I'm in this state of like, I'm trapped. Our lives are over. We're going to be in this canyon all night. We're going to either kill ourselves or have to be rescued or look like idiots. It's a terrible place. And he's just like, hey man, what's going on? And something about that moment, like, kind of turned me around. I thought, his life is going on. It's just an ordinary day for a hummingbird at, 1,500 feet or whatever. Up a canyon, and I'm just this guy who, he's like, I don't see you very often here. Like, okay, we can do this. We're gonna find a way out of this canyon. We're not gonna lose our lives here. We're smart and we're both healthy. Neither one of us is like in any kind of major physical distress, other than Kelleigh's ankle is the size of a softball. We'll find a way out. So I very carefully climbed back down to her, told her what I'd found, and we made a plan to get the hell out of the canyon.
Yeah. So at that point, because a lot of it was vertical, we just started looking and assessing. Okay, we need to drop in, down canyon was to our right, and looking at that, and then I'm looking at the heights of the different cliffs, because there were cliffs there. There was how we had climbed up. But then also a little further right, there were several sheer cliffs dropping down. And I started just doing the math in my head. Okay, we can start here. There's a great tree there. I can arrange to ghost that, and we can rappel down from there. And then so that first rappel was probably a good 100 feet, which was great. Like, because starting to feel like we're going to get moving. And then the second one, because again, it's not very well traveled and there's a lot of scrub brush and everything else. So when I ghosted, my webbing and my accessory cord got caught, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get it loose. And we looked at it, and I thought I could probably hike up and get it, but again, we're just everything. I feel like a lot of our trial was just minutes, a minute here, a minute there, that constantly added up to keeping us there longer and slowing us down. And, you know, obviously fatigue starts to set in.
Yeah.
And so I had to abandon that gear.
Yeah. And I guess for the listeners, since you made us backtrack earlier on the canyon classification.
You were reading my mind.
Yeah, I figured. When we're talking about ghosting, Kelleigh can describe it better, the technique and the hardware that we used than me. Go ahead, tell them what we're talking about.
So I had a loop of webbing with two Malyon repeats, quick links, however you want to call them. And so the rope passed through those two.
Basically a strap with a ring on either end.
Yeah, a strap with a ring on either end of it. And then on one of the rings, my accessory cord, which is just a very thin piece of rope that doesn't weigh a lot. You use, you know, a thinner piece of rope so that you're not carrying a lot of extra weight, but you can use that to help retrieve your stuff. So a thinner piece of rope attached only to one of those rings. And then the rope passes through both rings for the rappel. And then when you're finished with the rappel, you can pull the rope and then the cord, and then the rings themselves are no longer attached to each other, so that you pull from one side that the accessory cord is attached to, and that pulls it out. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it pulls it out from around this really scrubby, barky tree. And then everybody ducks because you would just pull two pieces of metal and sent them flying towards you like a bolo.
Yeah. And so in summary, it's just something that you can, you know, use to attach yourself to, in our case, mostly trees, but then yank it back down and use it again. And that was our goal, is to do that so we weren't blowing through so much webbing, and so we weren't having so much impact in terms of leaving anchors everywhere, even though it's a place that probably no one will ever see again, but idiots like us. But yeah, so we were using that system, and it worked for the first one.
Yeah, it worked great for the first one, which thankfully was a big rappel. We got a lot of distance on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the second one, and I actually did climb up a little bit and cut the accessory cord so that I could keep what I still had left.
Yeah, it just got stuck on the second one. We couldn't yank it back down. So from that point, we did have to build some anchors to get back down to the bottom. But we did eventually get back down to the bottom. And at that point, it was, you know, pitch black, nighttime kind of thing. And we were kind of in it for real. And again, just, you know, to clarify, we looked at our gear. We did both have Garmin InReach devices. So, you know, if we really wanted to, we could have pushed the SOS button on those. But we also had adequate water and food and warm clothing, and I guess if needed, fire building equipment, water filtration. We were pretty well kitted out. But we did have that dilemma, you know, even before we climbed down from that ledge, should we be like pushing the button on this thing and asking for somebody to get us? And I think our conclusion was, they're probably going to say, are you hurt? Are you injured? Are you freezing to death? No. Okay. Maybe in the morning, someone can come down and help you walk out. You know, I guess maybe the best case scenario is someone would throw a rope over the edge of the rim for us, but we weren't even sure if that was, you know, a reality, because even though I could see the edge of what I assumed was the rim, for all I know, it was a fin, you know, or a slab.
Yeah.
Crevasse, you know, and long story short, we thought it was probably better to get ourselves out, but we did have the gear to, you know, call for help if we needed to.
Yeah. I think that's a smart decision.
Yeah. And it was also the conversation of, you know, very few people run that canyon because very few people are qualified to run that canyon. So understanding that people are not going to be able to access us.
Yeah. We've heard enough stories on your podcast about search and rescue having travails, you know, not necessarily being the best equipped to get to people. And of course, that's hindsight, but That's kind of where our heads were. Not that, not that we're canyon experts and that no one else could do what we were doing, but more along the lines of it's going to take them time to find somebody who is, able to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And is it really worth it for us to sit here if we're still both, in one piece?
Physically able to continue. That makes sense. So was the thought of ever like staying place for the night and just waiting till the morning? Did you think of that? Or
we had that thought, and our thought process was this. We were both pretty cold already. To do that, we would probably have had to produce a fire, I think. I don't know if we could have, just huddling together would have kept us warm enough overnight. We were both a little bit wet.
So hypothermia wasn't a concern.
Oh, it was
that comes later in the story.
Yeah, and I do carry a Mylar blanket with me. We had a fire starting kit and everything else, but the amount of energy to expend to do that, and then also still knowing that there is a 90% chance that when the sun comes up the next day, we're going to have to finish the canyon. So at that point, we're even twice as tired. We haven't eaten at that, again, it's like those little moments of what adds up, like what's taking the like finding the anchors and stuff like that was taking time. Having time to sit and even just think or rest is also time on your feet that you were burning calories. So again, and water. So again, you got to think, you got to keep moving.
But to your point, Shirley, we definitely went through that thought process. I mean, does it make more sense for us just to stay here and do this when we have daylight, but also spend a cold night in the canyon, or do we keep moving and get ourselves out? And it was not a, oh yeah, we'll just keep going kind of decision. It was no. It was like, what? And I mean, it was stressful. We were really at that point, like every decision we've made so far has not worked out in our favor. Like we're starting to really question ourselves. Do it make sense? But we opted to keep going.
Okay.
I actually had a moment. So, we got down to the middle section and then finally got to the third section of the canyon. And there was a moment, we were looking at the description and we get to that part. And I remember being exhausted, sitting down, being very frustrated, looking around like, this can't be a down climb. There's got to be an anchor. And I just sat there and was like defeated. And then I looked to my right and there's the anchor. And I was like, okay. And honestly, like finding that anchor and actually laughing for a moment. And then Jude came up behind me because I'm sitting there laughing. And he's like, what's up? And I was like, I didn't see it anywhere. I thought it was a down climb. There's the anchor. And that was the first rappel into the last section. So I actually had this huge moment of relief because I thought, okay, well, this is it. We just have to run the rest of the canyon. And here we go.
Yeah. I remember getting to the very beginning of that last the last section, which again is roughly 12 to 15 rappels. And we've already done at that point, probably more like 20 rappels because we did the first section and then we did our own rappels. And we were pretty tired, but we were still moving. But I remember getting to that point, just kind of taking a breath and saying, okay, this is it. We both have 2 headlamp batteries, so we're going to be able to see what we're doing, but we're going to be finding anchors in, the narrow beam of a headlamp, and it's getting cold, and we're going to be in water. From the description, we're going to be in water for the rest of this canyon. So, like, kind of take a breath and get ready and do this. And we jumped in, and it was tough. From that point, it was just nonstop swimming, rapping, swimming in freezing cold water
with you and a shorty.
Wearing a shorty.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, trying to rig ropes with hands that are shaking and muscles that are cramping from just the constant shivering. Like we were really cold. We put every layer of clothing on that we had, which was a fair amount, but even then, you're wet and there was no break. I mean, it's just into the water, takes your breath away kind of thing. Swim across, drag yourself into the shore, lay there for a minute, get up, pack up the rope, move 20 feet, 30 feet ahead, search for 10 minutes sometimes to try to find the next anchor or the next down climb, get frustrated, look around, and finally find it and keep moving. And the one sketchy moment for me the first sketchy moment for me and all that was we'd been doing that now at that point for a couple of hours. We were working our way through that, and it was slow going, and we were really definitely in the early stages of hypothermia. And I was using an ATC on a 2-strand rappel, and I always do the same thing methodically, but my hands are shaking, and I put my ropes through the ATC and clipped into the carabiner and stepped back just a little bit to test my weight. I always do. And one rope just shot right out of the ATC because I had missed it with the carabiner, which anybody can do.
Right. So good thing you did that test weight thing. Like you're
I did. And I had about 6 inches before I had been off the ledge. Like it was a short ledge, so you only have so much room to test the weight. And there's a low angle rappel on top of that. So there was only, so much option to test it. But I watched that fly out and I just said to myself, got to stay vigilant here.
Right. Stay focused. Stay focused.
I remember probably wrap 6 or 7. I'd have to go back and look at the description, but we had just gotten into the water, and the scope of how much water we were going to have to deal with was really starting to hit me, because I got to this rappel, and it was literally, I think it was only like a 10 or 12-foot rappel to the top of the water. It was very short. Spicy getting into it, which means it's, low angle for the uninitiated.
Overhang, freehand.
Basically, it's really hard to get into and put your weight on that rope safely. Like you just there's some maneuvering happening. So I rappel down and I have my feet just above the water, and I turn around with my headlamp, and in the distance, not like turn around and see it, in the distance, I think I see the water exit. So the water exit is a good 15, 20 feet away. So I have to drop into the water, get off my rope, and swim across this little pond.
Yeah, then figure out how far you have to swim.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, by the way, how disturbing it is to be shipping on a ledge at each wrap, pull the rope out to its middle point, because you have no idea you can't see down far enough to know how far the wrap is, right? And at that point, we didn't know which wrap we were even on.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how disturbing it is to throw your rope over the edge in pitch black and just wait, and then hear in the distance a big splash, like a long way down, and think, okay, it's a big pool of water.
Yeah. And that actually, so that moment I had rappelled down, and I had my feet like 2 inches above the water, and I kept looking down at the water and looking over at the swim, and looking down at the water and over at the swim. And finally he yells at me, and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine. It's fine." Because I really had to work myself up at that moment, because it just kept getting colder and colder to drop into that water.
And I was having flashbacks of another, adventure we had climbing Mount Whitney, where she was scrambling on some tough rocks and disappeared for a while. And I had to wait the longest time for her to come back and say, "Okay, I'm okay." Because I had no way of communicating with her at that point. And same thing in this canyon. She'd lost her walkie, and all I could do is kind of sit near the edge and, "Are you down yet? Are you okay?" I mean,
listening for.
Are you in the water? Have you swum across? Because I can't see anything.
And he's
probably only seconds, but it feels like minutes for you.
Yeah, and he's not hearing any signs of life, because I'm literally just hanging on the end of the rope. Like I don't want to do it. Like a little kid. Like I don't want to jump in.
It was like that on every single rappel for the rest of the night. Like just swim. And some of the swims I was so tired that Kelly was dragging me across the water. I'd pull myself up onto like an algae covered rock face, try not to slip back into the water, just lay my face on the ground and kind of lay there for a minute in the water. Just like, I'm too tired to get up and go to the next one. I need 5 seconds. It was bad.
Wow.
Super cold. But like everything, there's a dawn after the night, and somewhere near the last few wraps, we literally looked up and said, "What is that in the sky?" There was just this slight glow around the edges of the rock faces. And we realized that we'd now been out there all night, and morning was coming back around again. And so we came down to the last series of rappels that we swam, totally hypothermic. The sun is finally starting to just light up the sky. And we come around a sharp 90-degree turn, and we are in this slot channel to the very last rappel, which is the highlight for us, for many reasons, it was the highlight, but is the highlight of the maze, in the sense that you're in a slot that, at its narrowest, where it exits the canyon, is maybe 18 inches wide. And it's 18 inches that stops dead in a sheer rock face 200 plus feet above the desert. And so in front of you is spread out the entire desert, and you're just on the edge of nothing, looking out at it. And for the first time, seeing something other than another slot in front of you, or another twist, or another bend, or another pool. You can see all of Las Vegas basically out there. And if you flipped it around and looked at it from the other side, it would be like a keyhole in the face of a castle tower or something. Like we're in this keyhole. And that last rappel, I'll let Kelleigh describe it actually.
So yeah, the amount of relief, not only like this, because my headlamp was dying. So my second headlamp was almost dead.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, like, because the dawn, you're tired, nothing's working right in your brain, and the dawn is coming. And I'm like, my headlamp's not working, but it doesn't seem to matter. Oh, wait, that's the sun coming to visit. And then the timing was just amazing, because we literally came out into that slot as the sun is coming through the keyhole. It was,
that sounds magical.
Yeah, it was magical.
More than one way.
And such a relief, where you're like, okay, all I got to do is hike out of here now. Obviously you got to do the last rappel. So
it's also the longest rappel of the day.
It's the longest rappel of the day.
200 plus feet.
Yeah. And so I walked to the end of the chute, and I look down, and there's the chokestone with a piece of really old black webbing around it. And I'm looking at that, and because in the description it said there's that.
And that's in water, by the way. There's a little stream that just runs right off the edge of this thing.
That constantly runs over it.
Like
there's algae growing on the webbing.
Yes.
So I look at that and I go, wow, the people who used to run this canyon would just use that as the anchor. Good for them.
She calls it a chokestone. I would almost say it was more of a dead man's anchor. I mean, it was a pile of rocks on the floor, set back 5 or 6 feet from the edge. That we weren't going to use that. No way.
Yeah. And then on the wall, way out over the drop, is a set of bolts. And which means if you want to use those bolts from where we were standing, you're looking at a chimney out over a 200-foot drop. And then I remembered in the description that there was also an additional bolt for safety, possibly above that. I am seeing nothing. And I'm just looking at that, thinking, I don't know that I can chimney out there right now, because I am so exhausted.
I'm sitting on the floor of the slot looking at my hands, thinking, let Kelleigh figure this out.
Yeah. He literally said to me, he's like, I'm gonna let you figure that out. And I looked around, and luckily the bolt that is above that, you actually have to come back into the slot a little bit, probably about 10 feet back from where those bolts are. And then there's like a little slope that you can climb. That is not, it's definitely like a 5. God, I call it a 5.2 or a 5. No, more than that.
It was sketchy.
It was sketchy because the handholds were not good. It was a friction climb. So I'd probably put it at a 5.4. So in rock climbing, the grades are rated, 5 is considered rock climbing. So the moment you have to put your hands down and kind of help yourself climb, that's rated a 5. So I would, that was definitely vertical friction climb up to that point. I'm sure if I had done it 6 or 7 hours before where I was, I wouldn't have blinked twice. And I started climbing that, and halfway up I slipped and dropped a huge F-bomb and probably a few other things. And
I pretty much just kept staring at my hands and literally chuckled for a second.
Yeah.
Because I was basically delirious. Like, oh, we almost died again.
Yeah. He's laughing because it's like, oh yeah, it's just another, obstacle. And I got up to the bolt, and I knew that the setup of the bolt was that I could use that bolt to then rappel down to the other bolts that are out over the edge. And then from there, rappel down. And I was so exhausted. and so done. And I knew no matter how mixed up we had gotten in the course description, that was the last rappel. And I thought, you know what, if I lose my rope, I don't care. I just want to be done. I just want to be out of here. So I did take a piece of webbing to extend from the bolt to help with the potential rope pull. And when I tied my water knot in the webbing, I messed it up. And when I went to put my quick link on there, I looked at it, and then I went to pass the rope through, and thank God I gave it another look, because that would have helped nobody. And that would have been another moment of like, not just falling on, there were so many rappels where you could have fallen and been injured, but most of the rappels are not that long within that canyon. It's just one after the other of these short bursts of like 12 feet, 10 feet, 20 at the most. They're not very big. They're very quick. To know that I'm messing up the knot at the top of a 200-foot drop. So yeah, I caught myself. I was able to fix it. And again, I took a moment to look around and think, do I want to rappel down and set my rope up off of the bolts that are there for the easy rope pull? And I was just too tired. So I rappelled down to Jude, at which point I still had to take that extra accessory cord that I still had with me and tie it to the rope, so that after I rappelled, because the angle is such that rope is free hanging, and he would have to hang out over the abyss to grab the rope to pull it in to rappel. And I didn't want him to have to hang over there.
Yeah, it's nothing really safe to, personal anchor to. So
yeah,
like, here's the cord, hold on to this. If you drop this, you're not going to be able to reach the rope.
Yeah. I mean, in a normal circumstances, and sometimes you run a canyon, you're like, oh, I'll just reach, you reach out over the abyss, and I grab the rope, or you clip into the choke stone, and then you can grab it. There were a lot of options there, but it was just, again, we were at hour
24 at that point.
24.
Yeah.
So we had spent 24 hours in the canyon. And I threw the rope.
The excitement isn't over yet.
Yeah. I throw the rope, and of course it hits. There's a series of ledges on the way down. It hits the first ledge, and I look down, and it is a hot mess on that ledge. My rope it's got 20 knots in it. It's just sitting there in a complete tangle. And I looked at it, and I looked at Jude, and I said, I'm not pulling it back up. I'm going to go down there. I'll anchor myself on that first ledge, and I'll redress the rope and rethrow it. And hopefully at that point I can see the bottom, because there was that ledge, so you couldn't quite see the bottom. So I threw it again and came back down. But that whole procedure, of course, because it was just a snake's nest of rope. Your worst nightmare, looking at it just piled on the ground, like, who did this to me? So, and him just like waiting. So I get all the way to the bottom, and I'll let Jude take it from here.
From the top, it was another one of those interminably long waits, and I had myself sitting back maybe a foot or so from the edge, so I could at least kind of hear her, because we didn't have walkies anymore. And it's 200-foot drop. So I'm, trying to kind of stay close enough that I can hear her without putting myself over the edge. And I'm sitting there, and in the little creek and the little tiny stream that runs down the bottom of the slot, I'm just watching these little tree frogs hopping around, swimming back and forth. And like the wise creatures they were, staying away from the edge of the drop. And I was kind of mesmerized. And the next thing I know, I wake up and I'm falling over the edge of the cliff almost. Like literally, like caught myself and went, did I just fall asleep on the edge of a 200-foot drop? Like, holy crap. And I like kicked myself back an inch and said, okay, I'm not going to do that again. And like 10 seconds later, I fell asleep again and almost fell over the edge. And this time I'm like literally backpedaling, away from the edge. Oh my God, I'm going to die. I can't believe I'm so tired that I'm just like automatically falling asleep sitting here. But so that got the adrenaline going enough to kind of, keep me awake. This is an indication of like how kind of bad it was at that point, that I was sitting there in the sun falling asleep while she's going down. But eventually there was a big snap on the rope, and she blew two quick whistles on her rescue whistle to let me know that she was down. And I pulled the rope in and very carefully tied into it, paid attention to what I was doing, and started to wrap down. And about 50 feet down, I just stopped for a second to kind of take it in. And I kid you not, true story, as I'm hanging there, I hear that thrumming sound again. And right next to me on dive bombing my rope is a hummingbird. And he's just flying there like, oh, blue rope. This is the coolest thing ever. I'm like, really, buddy? I appreciate you shepherding me through these moments in the canyon. I don't know where you were in the dark night, but, thanks for being here again. And it kind of gave me a sense that once again, we were going to be okay. And I just dropped down to the bottom and nice even wrap because Kelleigh had already pulled everything apart. And we got to the bottom. And then what happened, Kelleigh?
I tried to pull the rope and it didn't come with us. I pulled on the rope, and again, I probably could have worked harder, and I probably could have gotten my rope back, but I pulled on the rope and it didn't move at all. And I pulled on the rope and it didn't move at all. And I hung on the rope and it didn't move at all. And at that point I thought, I could start wrapping. A lot of times I will use either my belay device, and I'll climb up a little bit and throw some weight on the rope and just kind of like drop onto it to try to get it a little scooch to make it move. And I thought, nope, I don't have the energy for this.
Yeah, you know what I did? I pulled on it once and I said, goodbye, rope.
He did. I don't even think it was a full pull. It was just like a light tug. And then his hands just kind of like threw it out away from him. Like, I'm so done with this rope.
It's $600 worth of brand new, used only once rope hanging from the ledge. And I just walked away and said, I don't care.
Yeah. Both of us. In fact,
we're on the ground.
We had a nice moment where we chuckled over it. Like, if this is all that we lose is a couple pieces of gear throughout the night and 2 brand new ropes, then so be it. People pay bigger money for less. So So at that point we hiked up.
And the last phase again of the canyon hike is you're just a lot of down climbing on a boulder field. It's still a fairly long hike, especially when you're exhausted, but we kind of just picked our way out until we finally reached the trailhead parking lot, dumped all our gear there. And then I hiked back up the road, which is about 1.5 miles to where our car was parked to go get that. And it's strange, the most surreal thing. It's like daylight now. I'm running up this road in a wetsuit. Cars are like driving by on their morning, like scenic tours of of Red Rock Conservation Area. And I'm like jogging in this wetsuit after it's been 26 hours at that point. We had been from start to finish, 26 hours of moving. And I get the car and I drive down. And when I get back to the trailhead parking lot, smack dab in the middle of the parking lot is an LAPD SUV. Standing next to it, a very tall, very tan, classic mirrored sunglasses police officer who is interrogating Kelleigh.
So Jude leaves me because I think I forgot to mention I twisted my ankle a second time.
Yeah, that's right.
So my mobility was pretty limited at that point. In fact, the idea that the third section of the canyon was rappel after rappel was actually worked really well in my favor because I didn't have to hike so much. It was mostly just setting up the rappels and getting down on them. So it was less hiking, less scrambling. So that last hike out was awful for me because I felt like, oh, this is it, we're done. And then my body was like, no, you're not done. And you're not, I kept tripping and falling as we were trying to hike out. So when we got to the trailhead, Jude looked at me and he goes, you know what, you stay here with the gear. I'll go up the road and get the car. And I was like, yes, thank you. So I'm laying on the ground, sunning myself, just trying to warm up. And a police cruiser pulls up and he looks at me and he gets out of the vehicle and he walks over and he goes, did you, he said to me, he goes, are you coming or going? And I said, coming. And he's like, oh, well, you didn't spend the night out there, did you? And I was like, I sure did. And he said, are you Kelleigh? And I was like, yeah. And he said, you have some friends that are really worried about you.
Yeah. And where's Jude?
And then he, with his mirrored sunglasses, he pulls his sunglasses down and gives me like this stern look and goes, "Where's your husband?" Yeah. Like I was immediately that I had left him behind or that something horrible had happened. And I said, "Oh no, he's up the road. He's getting the car. He'll be back in just a minute." And then, he explained to me that they had searched our hotel room to see where we were, and that they waited till the park opened, and that's when they came to actually come look for our car. So he hadn't even found our car yet. He went to the trailhead where he knew we were supposed to come out.
And I guess the chain of events was when her friend Leslie, who lives in Las Vegas, just called or texted to check in with us at some point, and when we didn't answer, she got worried, and so after multiple attempts to get a hold of us, she assumed we were in trouble, and she first reached out to the Bureau of Land Management, and they pretty much told her to go pound sand. I mean, they were just like, we can't help you. But she had a friend.
Yeah, she had a friend that was a retired Las Vegas Police Department. Her friend Brenda, and then Brenda said, "Well, let's call the police because they can check their hotel room to see if they had been to the hotel room." Which
we were supposed to fly home that day. At that point we'd already missed our flight, so we should have been checked out of our hotel room.
Yeah,
and all of our stuff was obviously still there.
Yeah.
And so, that guy. Apparently, the officer called the Bureau of Land Management and said, "Where's the most likely location to find these people?" And they kind of gave them their best, impression. And he literally drove straight to that ice box trailhead where we exited. And I mean, the timing couldn't have been, it's kind of funny, really. Like we had just gotten there, and I was just up the road getting the car, and he was like, "Oh, here you are."
Yeah.
Yeah. 10 minutes ago, we still thought we were going to die, but we're okay. Here we are.
Yeah. And that was another good and moment of like, we did, in our planning, we did all the right things because my friend Leslie lived in the area, and I told her this canyon takes 12 to 14 hours typically. So if you don't hear from us in like 18 hours, this is where we would be parked. This is what we are doing. If you don't hear from us in 18 hours, I mean, don't worry about it too much because we have SOS buttons. And, I kind of played it off, but I was also in the back of my head saying like, okay, you're supposed to let people know where you are and what you're doing.
And she had also reached out to some of our friends in a big Facebook Messenger group that we were all in, and kind of to raise the alarm. And, probably one of the good things is that our friend Nate basically sort of calmed it down. He said, they both carry Garmin InReach. They both pack like ridiculous amounts of stuff whenever they do these things. They're probably just delayed. Like, it's a good idea to follow up, but don't freak out yet. And fortunately, no one called our parents and said your kids are dead or anything like that. It's probably good.
Yeah. So I came up with the phrase that like a good friend will call you on your birthday. Your best friend will call search and rescue.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a fine line to know when to call and when not to call.
It is tough.
Yeah.
Because there was this time when maybe I'll just say a friend. I don't want to call him out. Went somewhere and they were supposed to meet, it was like two or three groups of people meeting, and they had talked about meeting at 3 different camp spots. So group A went to one camp spot. Other guy goes to what he assumed was the right camp spot. They weren't there. Didn't check the other camp spot. Goes to the trail. I mean, the group A messages me in the morning. "Do you know where he went?" I was like, "I only know he went to this area, like Tikaboo area." I didn't really know what his plans were. Of course, no cell service out there, right?
Yeah.
So 24 hours go by. We don't hear from him. We have no idea where he's at. Did he get in an accident on the way to the canyon because he left in the dark? Like, who knows what happens? So we finally decide to call the sheriff's office. And, and then of course you're trying to call their cell phone too and messages, and nothing's going through. So you have no idea what to do. They check the hospitals. He's not in any hospitals, not in any jails, but that was never a concern, And then like 4 hours later, I just am like, maybe I'm gonna call again. He answers his phone like, hey, what's up? I'm like, where the hell are you? We've been worried sick for like 30 hours. And he had no idea he was even missing.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
We made him get it in reach and communicative about what his plans are. Yeah. But it's a really hard line as the friend, like worrying about the party.
Right.
Really fine line as to when you call and when you don't.
Yeah.
But good for you guys for telling people what your plan was and when to expect you to be out so that they at least could be alerted.
Yeah, we even had I think we even had a note on the car. Yeah,
we had a note on the dashboard.
We try to do that stuff, but it also backfires because we couldn't, contact Leslie to say, hey, we're okay.
And, I did. I forgot to mention that too. When we were in the third section, we were in really tight slot section of the canyon. I think it was like around 11 o'clock at night. I heard a helicopter.
Yeah.
Because I remember it being around 11 because I looked at my watch and I went, oh, crap, I bet she called search and rescue. And, we don't need rescue yet.
Right.
But, it was that late. And I was like, I know she's probably worried.
But it wasn't for us.
It wasn't for us. There was they sent the helicopter out for a lost hiker, but they didn't want to come look for us. There was an elderly woman that had gone hiking that day and she didn't return back to the trailhead. So they were out looking for her.
Yep.
She needed it more than we did.
Yeah.
We drove back to our hotel and the last kind of funny moment was we were staying on the 23rd floor. I don't know. I remember that, but I do. And there's like a doorman who checks everybody's ID. And he asked us, show him our thing. And then he asked us what our names were. And I thought that was weird. No, I'm Jude and Kelleigh. And he looked at us with big eyes. He goes, you are the missing ones.
Like we were found.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah, because they had gone through the Las Vegas police. They had searched the room. Yeah. And he saw the backpack. So that's why he was like, I thought so. I thought you were the missing ones.
Yeah, we kind of stuck out like a sore thumb in a casino.
That's kind of funny. So what did you guys learn through your ordeal with the canyon?
Nothing. No, okay. I'm kidding. We've always been good planners, but I guess for me, the understanding was that no matter how well you think you know the route and how well you think you know your skills, that efficiency can stratified over a long period of time can really screw up your plans. There's only so many things you can kind of either choices you make or time that you waste that before it starts to add up and you can be in a bad spot. So I think the goal is just to be more realistic. If we ever did that hike again, I would do it on the summer solstice. I'd probably camp, in Red Rock Conservation Area and, be at that drop in.
I definitely want to do it again just because it is, it's very unique. It's very cold and wet though, but because of everything that was going on, I didn't get to appreciate.
Yeah.
Looking back at because we only had footage from the beginning of the day, and
first
then
half,
when it started hitting the fan, we turned our GoPros off, and then
we had to switch to our headlamps on our helmets. So put away the cameras.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to see, what that second half of the canyon looks like, not in the dark.
Yeah, I'm sure it's even more stellar
hypothermic conditions
in the daytime.
Yeah, for sure. I don't even know. Like, what would you do differently? Would you have turned around like at the beginning if you knew how?
Yeah, we won't make that mistake.
Yeah, that is, it's the same as like Summit Fever, right? You've worked so hard. You did all this research, you have all the gear. In fact, the airlines had lost our ropes. We had bought new ropes.
Yep.
So yeah, like there was a lot of investment, and the problem when you invest so much time and energy and enthusiasm, like you're just like, it's a stellar canyon, so you're just really looking forward to that experience that you don't want to give it up. You don't want to turn around and say, you know what, it's okay, I can come back another time.
We really did learn, back to your question, and I think about it, for example, we just finished a trip in October out to Moab, and we did a canyon we led a big group through a canyon. And when we chose that canyon, we looked at, the ratings for it and the anticipated number of hours to do it. And we said to ourselves, okay, this canyon looks really great, but it's an all-day canyon and not everybody in the group is very experienced. I bet it could take too long. Here's a half day, but that could easily take a full day. So I guess what I'm trying to say is what we learned is that even though we think that we're pretty good technical climbers and canyoneers, sometimes, if it says it's a 4 to 6 hour canyon, it still might take somebody who's very, decent at what they're doing, 8 hours or whatever. And that's exactly what happened in Moab. We took this group through what was supposed to be a half day canyon. Somebody kind of fell apart and we were out there until sunset. I mean, yeah, for sure. But we chose that canyon for that reason. We said, we really want to do a full day canyon, but we know now that things can go wrong and we may end up being out here all day. And so the lesson is learned there, I think, that being ambitious, but cautiously ambitious.
Yeah. And knowing that it was a large group that we took through that canyon. So knowing that's,
4 hours can easily be 8 hours.
4 hours. Yeah. You always got to add to that.
You could double that sometimes.
Canyon though.
I always go on the long side of the guide times just because I like to enjoy the canyon, take views. Yeah. I'm always slowly with Shirley. That's just what it is. How it's gonna be.
Yeah. Well, it was a little misleading in its own sense. When we first started doing canyons, the first few canyons were, it would say 4 to 6 hours, and we were running it in 2. We were like, okay, now we need to slow down.
Yeah.
Take our time a little bit more, and
we definitely have blown through some canyons, underestimates, but we recognize that that's not a rule.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So is there an essential piece of gear that you always carry with you?
Garmin InReach.
I mean, for sure.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And not to, not to plug the mother company too much, but on that, in the maze, neither one of us had true canyoneering packs at that point. We were still using climbing packs, and we literally ate through the bottom of our packs on that sandstone between chimneying and bridging and stemming and descending and everything else. By the time I was done, I'd worn a hole through the bottom of my pack, and then through the waterproof sack inside that, and then through the dry sack inside that to all of my critical gear. I mean, I couldn't believe how much friction we just generated over that 30 rappels or whatever. It was right after that we both got, I got, and then more recently she got Imlay packs, and those things are just bomb proof. I'm very impressed with how they work. So I think for me, for canyoneering specifically, that's my essential gear, is to have a really good canyoneering pack, and that thing is holding up like a machine.
Yeah. I remember picking up my pack after one of the deeper, the deeper swims, and picking up my pack and having to dump it out, and just realizing that I had slogged, because I hiked a little bit with it, and I was like, oh, there's so much water in my pack, and I'm just dumping gallons of water out of my pack.
Yep.
Because again, I'm not, I was tired. It was in the water section, and I was not thinking to immediately empty my pack.
Yeah, after the maze, I even bought a Black Diamond River Runner, one of those big black heavy ones, which is a great sturdy pack. And I actually still use that for climbing now, because you can it's bomb proof. But we took that into, I think, upper Eardley, lower Eardley, whatever, somewhere with some guys from Salt Lake City. And I was just carrying a bag of water.
And it's a dry sack. It has the roll top and everything.
Yeah, it's still
pulled up.
I mean, it would have been better just to shoot holes in it with a grommet or something, probably.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I really hope that we get the Imlay packs again soon.
Yeah.
It's in the works, but hopefully.
Great. Yeah, they're awesome.
Hopefully 2022 will be the year.
Okay. Any other questions for us?
Well, like I ask anyone, canyoneering makes me incredibly hungry. So what is your favorite in canyon snack?
My favorite canyon in snack is a stroopwafel, although they fall apart pretty easily. I've had a number of times where I've dropped my pack on the ground, and then I go, no, my stroopwafel. But they make me so happy. But I have recently also moved towards definitely carrying like a good sandwich, like solid food, for midway through.
Yeah, that's it for me. For me now, I still carry, lots of nutritional stuff, bars and gels and things like that. But I had kind of an epiphany. In 2019, my friends and I did two friends and I did a rim to rim to rim at the Grand Canyon, which is about a 50-mile run over and back in the canyon. And somewhere about halfway into that trip, I'd been just like living on bars and gels and electrolyte drinks and so forth. But I had stuffed into my bag a roast beef sandwich, just in case. I mean, this is economy of space here. It's kind of stupid to bring something like that, but in case I, get a need for real food. And we got about halfway through the canyon and I was like, I am really hungry at this point. I really want to eat something real. And I sat down and scarfed that down. And, if I did that sure on like it's a normal Wednesday night, trail run with my friends, if I came out from work and scarfed down a roast beef sandwich and then ran 5 miles, I'd probably just throw up. But in that circumstance, my body was like, we are prepped and ready to dissolve this in your stomach immediately. Go ahead and put it in there. I dropped
Real
that thing
food.
in and then just sprinted across the canyon, had no problems at all. And so that was like an epiphany for me. I said, I'm always going to carry real food now on these things. And I have ever since. I'll have some energy stuff in there, but I will try to find like a sandwich of some kind and just put it in there and eat it. It's great.
Very nice. How about after canyons? What's your favorite after canyon beverage?
I'm a teetotaler, so for me, it's probably usually Mountain Dew. I don't drink alcohol. Kelly, I don't know. What
I do drink alcohol, but not after a canyon. We're actually known by all of our friends for our voracious Mountain Dew consumption.
Which is ironic since I'm a dentist. Let's just put that out there right now. It is what it is.
So, we go out for a long canyon. We go out for a long mountain bike ride. We go out for mountaineering, and we always have a little mini cooler with some Mountain Dews at the end.
We'll carry them on our whitewater boats if we have.
Yeah, we carry them in whitewater. Yeah. We always have our Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Our friend Doug does that too. So we try to bring him one while we're having our beers so he has something to enjoy too. That's awesome. Cool. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
Oh man, that's a hard question. I wish I'd been prepped for this question, sure.
I know, right? I'm sorry I didn't send you the list.
I don't know. Kelly, where would you go?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I would have to answer one of two places. I mean, I've always wanted to go hike the Everest Pass in Nepal. So, going to Tibet. I do not want to climb Everest. I'm very against the Everest mentality, like must climb the highest mountain and must have $1 million gazillion to do it. I don't think that that's what the outdoors is about, but I think doing the base camp pass traverses, it takes a lot of people like 3 months to do that. So probably when I'm old and retired, I'll get to that, but that's definitely on my list.
I think I'd go to your house for dinner, Shirley, if you're, No, I'm kidding.
Sweet.
I'm a creature of habit, and I would probably say New Zealand. We've actually been there twice. We were married in New Zealand, and even though it's somewhere I've been now before, I love that place so much, and we have such a good time when we're there that if you told me, you can only go to one place, I would say, okay, well, I just want to go back there again.
Really have you done any of the canyoneering out there?
No, we have not.
No. We've done like probably everything else you can do there. We've mountain bike. We've done, Havasu crossings. We've done kayaking in, black sand beaches. We camped at the Siberian Valley, took a bush plane.
Our last trip there, the amount
there.
of luggage that we had was pretty impressive because we were mountain biking, scuba diving,
kayaking, running,
hiking. And because we do that so much, we're not tourists when we do it. We have our gear that we love, and
we're still tourists.
I mean, we're still tourists, but for scuba, we bring all our gear with us.
Yeah,
the only thing we don't bring are weights and tanks.
Yeah, tanks and weights.
Yeah,
but we do need to. We'll go there just so we can do an episode on your podcast about canyoneering in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I'll go with you.
Okay.
New Zealand's high on my list of places to go.
Yeah, and if you want to run the maze, we'll give you a heads up the next time we're going out there for that.
I got to check my schedule on that.
You might be busy that day.
I'm busy that day. Yeah.
Well, I feel like maybe if you have a bigger crew, then maybe rope work would be a little more efficient because
we had
Yeah.
the same thought.
We had the same thought.
Kinda,
That if we run it again, it would
I
be
mean, not
nice
too
to
big
have-
of a crew, maybe like 4 to
Three-
6.
No,
three
but
to
3 or
four.
4,
Yeah,
because then you're leapfrogging.
Yeah, somebody to scout. It'd be great to have someone to scout the next anchor while somebody
then
else is flaking.
You're also not expending so much energy with all the rope work too.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, somebody
Yep.
else can handle some of that.
That gets tiring, pulling down a rope 30
Mhm.
to 40 times, whatever it was. Yeah, it does. I was tired.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any other safety advice before we say goodbye?
Don't listen to us. We obviously
No.
are not safe people. I'm just kidding.
Always double check your emergency kit too. I had two goos with caffeine in my emergency kit that I'd forgotten about. And when we got back to the hotel that morning, I opened up my emergency kit and I went, oh man, I could have had more caffeine.
That would have been so good.
I would have been stoked. Yeah.
Oh, hey, take the battery out of your headlamp before you go through security in the airport. My buddy had his battery in his headlamp when we were going to do our Grand Canyon run, and somehow the button got pushed on his headlamp, and so his light was just on for the entire trip out there. And we got out there, and the next morning he was like, my battery's not charged, my headlamp. Well, I guess you're going to be following us down the South Kaibab.
Right. Yeah. Wow. I found that mine just drains the battery power if I leave it in there. So I either like flip them backwards or take them out, and then it's a little more helpful. But
that's a good tip, though, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, I really, really appreciate you guys sharing your story. I'm glad that nobody got hurt and it was just a long, epic day.
Yeah, comedy of errors.
We look forward to the comments from your listeners as to how dumb we are.
No, I think that you made a lot of the right decisions to get yourself out of the canyon safely. So
yeah, an even mix of bad choices and good recovery.
Good recovery.
I guess. I don't know.
Right.
26 hours. We didn't die. We just had a very long day.
Right. And how was your ankle at the end?
It was okay. It took some time to recover. It's actually really hard to say because this past year I twisted that ankle again, and I ended up going to the doctors, and they did an X-ray, and he said, you didn't, he's like, you just strained it this time, but he's like, in somewhere in the last few years you did break it. And I was like, what?
Yeah, I think.
And I said I had never had an X-ray and known that it was broken. And he's like, you have bone fragments in there from the tendon pulling the bone off. So that was also potentially what was going on in the canyon.
Oh man.
Yeah. But I have a history of ankle issues. I believe one time I fell and Jude looked at me and he goes, your ankles are dumb. It is a recurring thing. I do carry a wrap with me all the time in case it's going to happen again. But
she had it reconstructed when she was in college. She's had some.
I've had some ankle issues. So I think I have a very high tolerance for pain or ignoring that. Like when I do twist it, a lot of people will be like, oh my God, I can't walk. I can't. And when I do, I'm like, you just got to get back up. That's,
Which is very confusing when you're your husband, because you're like, at what point can I, how many times I've asked you if you're okay before I can, start to joke about it. I'm not really sure.
He just jokes about it now.
Yeah.
Your ankles are stupid.
Yeah. Oh, that would be hard.
Yeah, she's all right. It doesn't slow us down.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it. I follow you guys on Facebook and you're always out doing stuff. So
yeah.
It seems awesome. Very active life. That's great. Well, very cool. I feel like the canyons are calling. We should probably go.
Agreed.
Wow, what an intense story from Jude and Kelleigh. I'm really glad that Jude reached out to me a while ago and wanted to be on this show. One thing I wanted to talk about just briefly, they were mentioning the ghosting techniques that they used in canyoneering, and what they use is called the retrievable anchor. A lot of us also use a thing called a fiddle stick. where you just put a piece of fiberglass basically, or plastic. I don't know what it's made out of. I should, because I sell them, but and it has a little accessory cord attached to it that you attach your pole cord to, and then you put a stone knot around the tree with your rope. You rappel down that, and then when you pull the stick out of the stone knot, the knot collapses and everything falls down. That's one way that people ghost. Another way that people ghost is called a sand trap or a water anchor, a wanker. And those you either fill with water or you fill with sand, and you would put them in a way where it wouldn't pull down with you. And then once everybody rappels down, you pull the pull cord, which releases the water and the sand, and everything pulls down with you. Those are definitely advanced techniques. You don't want to be doing those on your first canyon. You definitely want to learn what you're doing when you use those techniques, but those are other ways that people are ghosting canyons. So I just wanted to mention those briefly. If you have a story like this or similar, or you know somebody that does and you would like to share your story, you can reach out to me like Jude did on thecanyonsarecalling@gmail.com, and we can get you here on the show so you can share your story, so that maybe, something similar doesn't happen to other people. We can all, use other stories to maybe not get ourselves into the same situation. I do want to say kudos to Kelly and Jude for not pushing the search and rescue button unnecessarily. They knew that they had gotten themselves in over their head, and they did what they needed to get themselves out, because neither one of them were hurt very badly, and they were not in a life-threatening situation. So they continued to go, which might have super sucked, but they got into it and they got themselves out. So kudos to them on that part. Maybe next time they'll just try to be a little bit more efficient, or turn around when they realize that they're in over their head. Like they did mention, they had learned to choose different canyons when they were going out with beginners in a bigger group next time. So that's awesome. That's all we can do, is learn from our situations that, we get ourselves into. So I wanted to mention again, just quickly, this podcast is completely listener supported. So if you would like to join us and support this podcast, you can do that on patreon.com/thecanyonsarecalling. And to show my thank you for my Patreon supporters, I am doing the monthly canyon calls, where we meet up once a month. It's the first Wednesday of every month. So the next one will be February 2nd at 6:30 Mountain Standard Time. We're going to get together and this time discuss our favorite gear, maybe our favorite ropes, shoes, backpacks, things like that. Each month we'll have a different topic. We'll go over things like knots, anchors, rappel devices, whatever. So if you'd like to join that, again, it's patreon.com/thecanyonsarecalling. And don't forget about the share your favorite episode with a friend drawing that's coming up March 1st. If you share your favorite episode with a friend, either on Facebook or Instagram, and tag me in it so that I know that you shared it, I'm going to put your name into a drawing, and that will be for it will be for a Canyon Fire rope. And then if I get more than 50 people, or you share with, 50 of your friends, maybe, then I'm going to add some more prizes. So for every 50 people that I get sharing, the more prizes there will be. So I would really like to get the word out about this podcast. It's been about a year now that I've been doing it, and I'm just super excited. It's going well. I have a lot of great content coming up, and I feel like getting these stories out to people will be really beneficial for the community. So if you also feel like that dream is a good goal, share with your friends. Thanks a bunch. And also, if you're in the Utah area, don't forget about the podcast first birthday party. That's going to be in North Wash on February 11th through the 13th. We'll meet at the Sandthrax Campground Friday and just do some canyons for the weekend, hang out by the fire, tell some stories. Hopefully the weather's great. Fingers crossed. February can be challenging. Anywho, the canyons are calling. I gotta go.